Captain Jake Morrison pressed his face against the cold metal window of the ship. The view outside took his breath away. The council station was huge, bigger than any city he had ever seen. It looked like a giant wheel spinning slowly in space, with lights covering every surface. Thousands of ships from different worlds were docked around it like metal flowers around a massive tree. "First time seeing it, Captain?" asked Ambassador Lisa Carter as she walked up beside him. She was a small woman with gray hair and kind eyes, but Jake knew she was one of the smartest people on Earth. Today she wore her best blue suit, the one she saved for the most important meetings. "Yes, ma'am," Jake replied, still staring at the station. "It's incredible. Hard to believe we're really here." Lisa smiled and looked out at the station, too. "It took us 40 years to get this invitation. 40 years of proving that humans could be trusted. Today we become the newest members of the Galactic Council." Jake turned away from the window and looked at his uniform in the reflection. Everything had to be perfect today. He was not just representing himself or his ship, but all of humanity. Every person back on Earth was counting on them to make a good impression. "Are you nervous?" Lisa asked. "A little," Jake admitted. "What if we mess this up?" "We won't," Lisa said firmly. "We've prepared for this. We know their customs, their languages, their ways of doing things. We'll be fine." The ship's computer spoke in a calm voice. "Docking in 5 minutes. Please prepare for arrival." Jake straightened his uniform one more time and walked to the docking bay. Dr. Helen Brooks was already there, checking her equipment. She was the team's expert on alien life forms, and she looked excited rather than nervous. "Ready for this, Helen?" Jake asked. "More than ready," she replied with a big smile. "Do you know how many different species we're going to meet today?" "Over 200 different kinds of intelligent life, all in one place. This is the greatest day in human history." The ship settled into the docking bay with a soft thud. Jake could hear the machines connecting their ship to the station. His heart was beating fast now. This was it. The airlock opened with a hiss, and Jake stepped through first. The air smelled different here, like metal and something else he could not name. The gravity felt a little lighter than on Earth, making each step feel strange. They walked into a large room with a high ceiling. The walls were covered with symbols from different worlds, and the floor was made of some kind of smooth stone that seemed to glow softly. But what caught Jake's attention immediately were the aliens waiting to greet them. There were 3 of them, and they all looked very different from each other. The tallest one looked like a giant insect standing on 2 legs. Its skin was hard and shiny like armor, and it had 4 arms instead of 2. Its eyes were large and made up of many smaller eyes, like those of a fly but much bigger. The second alien was shorter but much wider. It looked like it was made of gray stone with thick arms and legs. Its head was small compared to its body, and it had no neck that Jake could see. When it breathed, steam came out of small holes in its chest. The third alien was the strangest of all. It looked almost like a human, but its skin was pale blue and seemed to glow slightly. It was very tall and thin, and its eyes were completely black with no white parts at all. It wore long robes that seemed to move even though there was no wind, but what surprised Jake most was that all 3 aliens were carrying weapons. The insect-like one had 2 curved blades attached to its belt, and they looked very sharp. The stone-like alien had huge metal gloves on its hands that sparked with electricity. The blue one carried a long staff that hummed with energy, the insect. Alien stepped forward and spoke in perfect English. "Welcome to the Council Station. I am Ambassador Zethkri of the Mantis Republic. We are honored to meet the human delegation." Jake stepped forward and extended his hand. "I'm Captain Jake Morrison. This is Ambassador Lisa Carter and Dr. Helen Brooks. We're very happy to be here." Zethkri looked at Jake's extended hand for a moment, then reached out with one of his forearms to shake it. His skin felt hard and cool, like touching a beetle. "I must ask," Zethkri said, looking at all 3 humans carefully, "where are your ceremonial weapons?" "All species bring symbols of their strength when they join the council." Jake looked at Lisa, confused. They had studied the council's customs. for months, but nobody had mentioned anything about weapons. "We don't carry weapons," Lisa said politely. "On Earth, we believe that diplomacy works better when everyone is unarmed." The three aliens looked at each other. Jake could not read their expressions, but he felt like they were having some kind of silent conversation. "Interesting," said the stone-like alien in a voice that sounded like rocks grinding together. "I am Thurak of the Mountain Clans, in all our history, every species has brought weapons to show their power. You are the first to come with nothing." "We come in peace," Jake said. "We want to learn from you and share what we know. We don't need weapons for that." The blue alien spoke for the first time. Its voice was soft and musical, like wind chimes. "I am Elder Vorthan of the Light Seekers. Your arrival has been anticipated." There was something in the way it said anticipated that made Jake uncomfortable. It sounded like they had been expecting humans for a long time, but not in a good way. "Shall we proceed to the council chambers?" Zethkri asked. "The other delegates are eager to meet you." As they walked through the station's corridors, Jake noticed more and more aliens. There were creatures that looked like walking trees, others that seemed to be made of liquid metal, and some that were so strange he could not even guess what they might be like. But every single one of them was armed. Some carried swords that glowed with energy. Others had guns that looked like they could destroy buildings. A few had weapons that Jake could not even identify, strange devices that hummed or buzzed or made no sound at all. "Why does everyone have weapons?" Helen whispered. To Jake, "I don't know," Jake whispered back. "Maybe it's just their custom." But as they walked, Jake noticed something else. The aliens were not just carrying weapons for show. They kept touching them, checking them, making sure they were ready to use. It was like they were all afraid of something. They entered a huge room filled with hundreds of aliens sitting in rows of seats that went up like a stadium. The noise was incredible. There were clicks and buzzes and sounds that hurt Jake's ears. But as soon as the humans entered, the room went completely quiet. Every eye in the room turned to look at them. Jake felt like he was being examined by a scientist looking at a bug under a microscope. The silence stretched on and on, making him more nervous with each passing second. Finally, Zethkri spoke to the crowd. "Fellow delegates, I present the human delegation. They come to us unarmed, as is their custom." The reaction was immediate. Some aliens made sounds that might have been laughter. Others seemed to be whispering to each other in excited voices. A few actually moved away from the humans as if they were afraid. Jake looked at Lisa, who seemed as confused as he was. This was not the welcome they had expected. They had thought the other species would be happy to meet them, but instead they seemed either amused or frightened. "What's going on?" Jake asked quietly. "I don't know," Lisa replied. "But I think we're about to find out." The next 3 days passed in a blur of meetings and strange customs. Jake found himself watching the other species more carefully than he had ever watched anything before. Every alien in the station carried weapons, but it was not just for show. During the long council sessions, he noticed that whenever discussions got heated, the aliens would touch their weapons without even thinking about it. The insect-like Zethkri would run one of his 4 hands along his curved blades when other delegates disagreed with him. The stone creature Thurak would flex his electric gloves until they sparked. Even the peaceful-looking blue aliens would grip their energy staffs tighter when they felt nervous. "It's like they need the weapons to feel safe," Jake told Lisa during a break between meetings. They were sitting in the human quarters, a small set of rooms the council had given them near the main chambers. "I've noticed it too," Lisa replied. She was reading through her notes from the day's sessions. "But there's something else." "Have you heard the way they talk when they think we can't understand them?" Jake shook his head. "What do you mean?" "They keep mentioning something called the old warnings and the silent ones. I've been trying to figure out what they mean, but nobody will explain it to me directly." Dr. Helen Brooks came into the room carrying a large tablet computer. She looked excited about something. "You two need to see this," she said, sitting down at the table with them. "What did you find?" Jake asked. "I got permission to look at the council's historical records." Helen said, turning the tablet so they could all see the screen. I wanted to learn about how different species joined the council over the years, but I found something very strange. The screen showed what looked like old paintings and carvings from different alien worlds. Each picture showed the same thing, tall, thin creatures that looked remarkably like humans. They had 2 arms, 2 legs, and no fur or scales or other alien features. These are from at least 20 different species, Helen said, pointing to the pictures. Some of them are thousands of years old. But look at the dates. Jake looked at the small text under each picture. The dates were written in Galactic Standard Time, but Helen had converted them to Earth years. The oldest was from 50,000 years ago. The newest was from 12,000 years ago. That's impossible, Jake said. Humans haven't even been in space for 1,000 years yet. That's what I thought too, Helen replied. But every major species in the galaxy has these pictures. They all show the same kind of creatures. And they all call them by the same name. What name? Lisa asked. The Unarmed ones, Helen said quietly. Every single culture has stories about a species that was so dangerous they didn't need weapons. They're always described as quiet, peaceful-looking, but absolutely terrifying when they fought. Jake stared at the pictures on the screen. The creatures in the paintings did look human, but that was impossible. Humans had only learned to travel between stars a few hundred years ago. There was no way they could have been in contact with alien species 50,000 years ago. There has to be some mistake, he said. Maybe they're pictures of some other species that went extinct. Maybe, Helen said, but she didn't sound convinced. But Jake, look at this one. She pointed to a carving that looked like it was made from black stone. This is from the Mantis Republic Zethkri's people. It's carved into the wall of their most sacred temple. And look at what it says. The text was in the Mantis language, but Helen had translated it. It read, "Here lie the warriors who needed no blades, who fought with empty hands and won with silent strength. May they never return to trouble the peace of the galaxy." That's creepy, Lisa said. It sounds like they were afraid of these unarmed ones. It gets worse, Helen said. She scrolled to another picture. This one was from the mountain clans, Thurox people. It showed what looked like a great battle, with the stone-like aliens fighting against tall, thin creatures that looked human. But the humans in the picture were winning, even though the stone aliens had huge weapons and the humans had nothing. This is from their military academy, Helen explained. It's supposed to teach young warriors about the greatest defeat in their history. According to the text, a small group of unarmed ones defeated an entire army of mountain clan warriors. The battle lasted for days, but the unarmed ones never gave up, never retreated, and never stopped fighting until they won. Jake felt a chill run down his spine. Helen, what are you suggesting? I'm not suggesting anything, Helen said. I'm just showing you what I found. But Jake, there's one more thing. I found references to something called the Great Silence. It happened about 12,000 years ago. According to the records, the unarmed ones just disappeared one day. They were there, the next day they were gone. No one knows what happened to them. That evening, Jake couldn't sleep. He kept thinking about the pictures Helen had shown them. The creatures in the paintings looked so much like humans that it was hard to believe it was a coincidence. But how could humans have been in space 50,000 years ago? He got up and walked to the window of his room. Outside, he could see the lights of hundreds of ships from different worlds. Each one carried aliens who were armed and seemed to be afraid of something. But what? The next morning, Lisa had a private meeting with Ambassador Zethkri. She had requested it to discuss some of the finer points of the trade agreements they were negotiating. But she had other questions on her mind too. They met in Zethkri's private office, a room filled with artifacts from this homeworld. The walls were covered with weapons, swords, spears, and guns that looked like they belonged in a museum. But Jake noticed that all of them looked like they had been used recently. "Ambassador Carter," Zethkri said, pouring her a cup of something that looked like tea but smelled like flowers. "I trust your stay has been comfortable?" Very comfortable, thank you, Lisa replied. But I have to ask you something. Why does everyone here carry weapons? Is there some kind of danger we should know about? Zethkri's compound eyes seemed to study her for a long moment. You humans are very direct, he said finally. I suppose that is one of your interesting qualities. Is that a bad thing? Lisa asked. Not bad, Zethkri said. Just unusual. Most species learn to speak in circles when they join the council. They learn to hide their true thoughts behind polite words. But you humans always seem to say exactly what you mean. We think honesty is important, Lisa said. So will you answer my question? Why the weapons? Zethkri set down his cup and walked to one of the windows. Tell me, Ambassador Carter, what do you know about fear? Fear? Lisa was confused by the question. I know that all intelligent species feel fear. It's a survival instinct. Yes, Zethkri said. But what happens when an entire galaxy learns to fear the same thing? When every species, no matter how different, shares the same nightmare? Lisa felt her heart beating faster. What are you talking about? The weapons we carry, Zethkri said, still looking out the window, they are not symbols of strength. They are symbols of weakness. We carry them because we need to feel protected. We need to remember that we can fight back if we have to. Fight. Back against what? Lisa asked. Zethkri turned to look at her. Against the ones who fight without weapons. Against the ones who never surrender. Against the ones who were so dangerous that the entire galaxy had to work together to make them disappear. You're talking about the unarmed ones, Lisa said. Dr. Brooks found pictures of them in your historical records. Yes, Zethkri said quietly. The unarmed ones, the species that could win any fight without carrying a single weapon. The species that never knew when to quit. Lisa's mouth felt dry. What happened to them? They vanished, Zethkri said. 12,000 years ago, they just stopped? No one knows why? Some say they destroyed themselves in a great war. Others believe they left the galaxy to find new worlds to conquer. But the wise ones, the ones who remember the old stories, they believe something else. What do they believe? Lisa asked, though she was not sure she wanted to know the answer. Zethkri walked back to his desk and picked up one of his curved blades. The metal gleamed in the light from the window. They believe that the unarmed ones are still out there, waiting, growing, learning, and that one day they will return to remind the galaxy why everyone learned to fear them. Lisa stared at him. You think humans are related to these unarmed ones? I think, Zethkri said, setting down his blade, that you should ask your Dr. Brooks to look deeper into those historical records. There are files in the restricted sections that might interest her. Files that explain why your species was really invited to join the council. What do you mean? Lisa asked. I mean, Zethkri said, that this is not humanity's first invitation to the council. It is not even your second. You have been invited before, many times, under different names. The question is whether you will remember who you really are, or whether you will continue to pretend to be something you are not. Lisa left the meeting with more questions than answers. As she walked back to the human quarters, she noticed that the aliens in the corridor seemed to be watching her more carefully than before. Some of them even moved aside to let her pass, as if they were afraid to get too close. When she reached the human quarters, she found Jake and Helen waiting for her. Commander Ryan Kelly had been quiet for most of the trip to the council station. As the security officer for the human delegation, his job was to keep everyone safe. But so far there had been no threats to worry about. The aliens were polite, the station was peaceful, and the meetings were boring. That was why Ryan had started exploring. The council station was huge, with hundreds of levels and thousands of rooms. The humans had been given a tour of the public areas, but Ryan's military training had taught him to always know his surroundings. So when he had free time, he walked through the corridors, mapping the station in his mind. What he found was strange. There were entire sections of the station that were not on any of the maps they had been given. Whole levels that seemed to exist just for storing old files and data. When he asked about them, the aliens would change the subject or say they were just maintenance areas, but Ryan knew. The difference between a maintenance area and a high-security archive. On the fourth night of their stay, he made his move. Using skills he had learned in the military, he found a way into one of the restricted sections. The corridors here were darker than the rest of the station, and the air felt heavier. The walls were lined with machines that hummed quietly, processing and storing massive amounts of information. He found Dr. Helen Brooks, waiting for him in a room full of computer terminals. "How did you get in here?" Ryan asked, surprised to see her. "Ambassador Zethkri gave me access codes," Helen replied. "After Lisa's meeting with him yesterday, he sent me a message. He said there were things I needed to see." "What kind of things?" Ryan asked, looking around the room. The walls were covered with screens showing streams of data in languages he didn't recognize. "The real history of the galaxy," Helen said, "and the real history of humanity." She led him to a terminal where she had been working. The screen showed a star map, but it was different from any Ryan had seen before. Instead of showing the current positions of stars and planets, it showed the galaxy as it had been thousands of years ago. "Look at this," Helen said, pointing to a section of the map that was colored red. 12,000 years ago, there was a war. Not between two species, but between one species and everyone else. Ryan studied the map. The red area covered a huge section of the galaxy, including hundreds of star systems. "Who was fighting?" "The Terrans," Helen said. "That's what they called themselves. They were a species that looked exactly like humans. They had the same biology, the same psychology, the same everything. The only difference was that they lived 12,000 years ago." "Are you saying humans existed back then?" Ryan asked. "I'm saying humans are the Terrans," Helen replied. "Look at this genetic data." She pulled up another screen that showed complex DNA sequences. Ryan couldn't read the scientific notation, but Helen explained it to him. "I've been comparing human DNA to the genetic samples stored in these archives," she said. "The match is perfect. Not similar, not close, perfect. We are the same species." Ryan felt like the floor was moving under his feet. That's impossible. Humans evolved on Earth. We have fossil records going back millions of years. "Do we?" Helen asked. "Think about it, Ryan. How many gaps are there in the human fossil record? How many times have scientists found evidence that doesn't quite fit with the official story of human evolution?" Ryan had never thought about it before, but he knew that human evolution was still a mystery in many ways. There were missing links, unexplained jumps in development, and artifacts that didn't match the official timeline. "What are you suggesting?" he asked. "I'm suggesting that humans didn't evolve on Earth," Helen said. "I'm suggesting that we were put there. Hidden there, maybe even imprisoned there." She pulled up another file, this one showing what looked like a battle plan. The text was in multiple alien languages, but Helen had translated parts of it. "This is from the Great Alliance," she said. "It was a military cooperation between every major species in the galaxy. They formed it for one purpose, to stop the Terrans." Ryan read the translated text. It described battle after battle, with the Terrans winning against impossible odds. The aliens had better weapons, better ships, and greater numbers, but the Terrans kept winning. "It says here that the Terrans never surrendered," Ryan said, reading from the screen. "Even when they were completely outnumbered, they would keep fighting until they won or died." "That's not the worst part," Helen said. "Keep reading." Ryan continued reading. The text described how the Terrans fought differently from every other species. Most galactic wars were fought with rules. You attacked military targets, you avoided. Civilian areas, you accepted surrender when the other side gave up. But the Terrans didn't follow those rules. When they went to war, they fought to completely destroy their enemies. They didn't just want to win battles, they wanted to make sure their enemies could never fight again. "They called it total war," Helen said. "The idea that you don't stop fighting until your enemy is completely defeated." No other species in the galaxy had ever thought that way. Ryan found another section that made his blood run cold. It described how the Terrans had something called pack bonding. If you hurt one Terran, all the other Terrans would come for revenge. They would track down everyone responsible and make them pay, no matter how long it took. This is insane, Ryan said. According to this, the Terrans were like a hive mind, but worse. They would die for each other, and they would kill for each other. And that's why the entire galaxy was afraid of them, Helen said. Look at this tactical analysis. She showed him a military report written by the mountain clans. It described a battle where 50 Terrans had fought against 5,000 mountain clan warriors. The mountain clans had better armor, better weapons, and better training, but the Terrans had won. How is that possible? Ryan asked. Because the Terrans didn't fight like individuals, Helen replied. They fought like a single organism with 50 bodies. They shared information instantly, they coordinated perfectly, and they never got tired or scared or confused. When one of them was hurt, the others would become even more dangerous. Ryan read more of the report. It described how the Terrans had used tactics that no other species had ever seen. They would sacrifice some of their own people to gain an advantage. They would fight in ways that put them at risk just to hurt their enemies more. They would continue fighting even when they were badly wounded. The mountain clans called them the Death Seekers, Helen said, because they seemed to care more about destroying their enemies than about staying alive themselves. Ryan found another file, this one from the Light Seekers, Elder Vorthan's people. It was a psychological profile of Terran behavior. Listen to this, Ryan said, reading from the screen. Terrans display unique emotional responses not found in other species. They are capable of sustained hatred lasting for years or decades. They form permanent emotional bonds with other Terrans, leading to extreme protective behavior. Most disturbing, they appear to enjoy combat situations that would cause psychological trauma in other species. Helen nodded grimly. The Light Seekers were the galaxy's best psychologists. If they said the Terrans were mentally different from everyone else, they were probably right. But Helen, Ryan said, if humans really are the Terrans, then where have we been for the last 12,000 years? And why don't we remember any of this? Helen pulled up one more file. This one was marked with symbols that meant highest security in several alien languages. This is the answer, she said. It's called the Exile Protocol. The file described a plan developed by the Great Alliance after they had finally defeated the Terrans. Instead of destroying them completely, they had decided to try something else. They would take the surviving Terrans and put them on a remote planet where they could not harm anyone. Earth, Ryan said, understanding immediately. Earth, Helen confirmed. But that wasn't all. They also used advanced technology to make the Terrans forget who they were. They blocked their memories, changed their culture, and made them think they had always lived on Earth. A prison planet, Ryan said. They turned Earth into a prison planet. Not just a prison, Helen said, an experiment. They wanted to see if the Terrans could change. If they could become peaceful, if they could learn to live without constant war. Ryan stared at the screen, and we did. Humans have been living peacefully on Earth for thousands of years. We've built civilizations, created art, explored science. We've proven that we can be more than just warriors. Yes, Helen said. But the question is, what happens when we remember who we really are? What happens when the galaxy realizes that the Terrans have returned? As if in answer to her question, alarms began sounding throughout the station. Red lights flashed in the corridors, and automated voices spoke in dozens of languages. Emergency alert, the station's computer announced in English. All delegates report to the main council chamber immediately. Priority Alpha situation? Ryan and Helen looked at each other. They both knew that Priority Alpha was the highest level of emergency in the galactic government. It meant that something was threatening the entire galaxy. What do you think is happening? Helen asked. I don't know, Ryan replied. But I have a feeling we're about to find out. They ran through the corridors toward the main council chamber. Along the way, they saw hundreds of aliens. The council chamber had become a place of chaos. Aliens were shouting in dozens of languages, all talking about the same thing, how much money they should pay the pirates. On the giant screen at the front of the room, the hostage situation played. Out in real time, 200 innocent people trapped on a research station while armed pirates made their demands. Jake stood with his human team, watching the debate with growing frustration. The aliens had weapons that could destroy entire planets, but they were talking about giving the criminals exactly what they wanted. The Gornathi proposed 50 million credits, announced Thurak, the stone-like alien from the mountain clans. His electric gloves sparked as he spoke. It is a reasonable price for so many lives. Too much, clicked Ambassador Zethkri. The Mantis Republic suggests 30 million. We must not encourage future attacks by being too generous. Elder Vorthan, the tall blue alien from the Light Seekers, raised his energy staff. My people believe we should add 10 million for their safe transport. The pirates must be able to escape, or they might harm the hostages. Jake felt something burning in his chest as he listened. These aliens were not talking about rescuing anyone. They were talking about paying criminals and letting them go free to attack someone else later. This is wrong, he said, loud enough for nearby aliens to hear him. The creatures around him turned to stare. Ambassador Zethkri's compound? Eyes focused on Jake with what looked like concern. Captain Morrison, Zethkri said carefully, perhaps you do not understand our ways. The Council has always solved such problems through negotiation. It prevents greater violence. It prevents nothing, Jake replied, his voice getting louder. You pay them today, they attack someone else tomorrow? How many times have you done this before? The chamber was getting quieter as more aliens stopped talking to listen to the human. Elder Vorthan floated closer, his black eyes studying Jake's face. Many times, Vorthan said softly. It is the civilized way. We preserve life by avoiding conflict. Whose life? Jake asked. What about the next group of people these pirates attack? What about all the victims you could save by stopping them? Now, Ryan Kelly stepped forward to stand beside his captain. 200 people are trapped right now. Why are we talking about money instead of getting them out? Because fighting leads to death, Thurak rumbled. The pirates have weapons. Some hostages would die in any rescue attempt. This way, everyone lives. Everyone except the next victims, Ryan said. The fire in his chest was growing stronger. And the ones after that. And the ones after that. Helen. Brooks had been quiet during the debate, but now she spoke up. I've been reading your historical records. How long have pirates been operating in this region? Many years, Zethkri admitted. They are a persistent problem. How many attacks have there been? Helen asked. Perhaps 50 in the last decade, Vorthan said. And how many times have you paid them? Helen continued. All 50 times, Thurak said proudly. No hostages were harmed. But how many people became hostages because you kept paying? Ryan asked. How many would never have been attacked if you had stopped the pirates the first time? The aliens looked at each other uncomfortably. It was clear they had never thought about it that way. Lisa Carter had been watching the exchange with growing worry. She could see something changing in her colleagues, something that reminded her of the ancient files they had discovered. The humans were standing differently now, thinking differently. Perhaps, she said carefully, we could discuss other options. Maybe a negotiated surrender? There is no other option, Zethkri said firmly. This is how civilized species solve problems. We do not resort to violence when diplomacy can work. Your diplomacy doesn't work, Jake said. The words came out harder than he intended. It just moves the problem to someone else. The chamber had gone completely silent now. Hundreds of aliens were staring at the four humans, and Jake could see fear in many of their eyes. But he was past caring about their fear. We're going to get those people back, he said. Impossible, Thurak said immediately. The pirates have superior numbers and fortified positions. Any rescue attempt would fail. How do you know? Ryan asked. Have you ever tried? We do not need to try, Vorthan said. Our military advisors have analyzed the situation. The pirates cannot be defeated without massive casualties. Your military advisors, Helen said, understanding something. They've never actually fought a war, have they? They've only fought simulations and training. Exercises. The silence that followed was answer enough. You've all been at peace so long, Jake said, the pieces falling into place, that you've forgotten how to fight. You carry weapons, but you don't know how to use them in real combat. We know enough, Zethkri said, but his voice was uncertain. No. Ryan said, you don't? You know how to threaten and how to show force, but you don't know how to actually fight a war. Jake turned to face the giant screen showing the hostage situation. The pirates had ugly, brutal-looking ships and were making increasingly harsh demands. They knew the council would pay whatever they asked. Show me the tactical data, Jake said. Captain Morrison, Vorthen said, I do not think you understand the complexity of the situation. Show me the data, Jake repeated, and there was something in his voice that made the aliens step back. Zethkri nodded to one of his assistants, who brought up detailed scans of the pirate ships and the research station. Jake studied the information, with eyes that seemed to see things the alien military advisors had missed. 15 pirate ships, he said after a moment. Old models, poorly maintained. Standard defensive screens and light weapons. The research station has emergency shields and basic security systems. Yes, Thurok said. The pirates are too well armed and positioned for any rescue to succeed. Jake looked at Ryan, and they seemed to have a silent conversation. Ryan nodded. Slightly. How many ships does the council have in this area? Jake asked. 12, Zethkri said. But they are exploration and patrol vessels, not warships. Perfect, Jake said. That's all we need, the aliens stared at him in shock. Elder Vorthen spoke first. Captain Morrison, you cannot be serious. 12 ships against 15 with hostages at risk? It would be suicide. No, Jake said, and his voice carried a certainty that made several aliens actually move away from him. It would be a rescue. The council cannot authorize such an action, Zethkri said quickly. The risk is too great. Then don't authorize it, Jake replied. We'll do it ourselves. The reaction was immediate. Aliens began talking and frightened. Voices, their hands moving to their weapons. But Jake noticed that even though they were armed, they seemed afraid to actually draw those weapons. You cannot, Vorthen said. Humans have no military experience in space combat. You would be destroyed. Would we? Ryan asked. How do you know? Because, Thurok said, his voice getting louder, no species can fight effectively without superior numbers and firepower. It is impossible. Impossible for you, Helen said quietly, but not impossible for us. Lisa could see what was happening. Her colleagues were changing before her eyes, becoming something harder and more dangerous. The peaceful diplomats who had arrived at the council station were gone, replaced by something that reminded her of the ancient warriors in the historical files. Jake, she said, maybe we should think about this more carefully. There's nothing to think about, Jake replied. 200 people are going to die if we don't act. The council won't save them, so we will. But how? Zethkri asked. Even if you could somehow defeat the pirates, the hostages could be killed in the fighting. Jake turned to look at the alien ambassador, and Zethkri stepped backward involuntarily. There was something in the human's eyes that he had never seen before. Something that reminded him of the old stories his grandmother used to tell about the creatures that hunted in the dark. We won't let that happen, Jake said simply. You cannot guarantee such a thing, Vorthen protested. War is chaos. Innocent people always die. Not if we do it right, Ryan said. Not if we fight the way we're supposed to fight. And how is that? Thurok demanded. Ryan looked around the chamber at all the aliens with their weapons and their fear. Like we're not afraid to die, he said. Like the lives of those hostages matter more than our own. Like we'd rather be dead than let innocent people suffer. The aliens stared at him in horror. This was exactly the kind of thinking that had made the ancient Terrans so terrifying. The willingness to die for others, to sacrifice everything for people they didn't even know. This is madness, Zethkri whispered. No, Jake said, turning back to the tactical display. This is war, and we're very good at war. Elder Vorthen floated closer, his voice barely audible. Captain Morrison, I must tell you something. The records you found in the archives. They are not complete. There are older files that Explain why your species was truly feared? What do you mean? Jake asked. The Terrans were not feared just because they were effective warriors, Vorthan said. They were feared because they made other species fight like them. They had a quality that we call inspiration. When other races fought alongside Terrans, they became braver, stronger, more determined. They would risk their lives for causes they had never cared about before. Jake looked around the chamber and saw something new in the aliens' eyes. Along with the fear, the rescue fleet moved through space like a pack of hunters. 12 council ships, led by the human shuttle, approached the pirate stronghold with a determination that had not been seen in the galaxy for thousands of years. Inside the lead ship, Jake Morrison studied the tactical displays with eyes that seemed to see possibilities where others saw only problems. Remember, he spoke into the communication system that connected all 12 ships. We don't fight to destroy the pirates. We fight to save the hostages. Every decision we make has to put their safety first. The response came from dozens of young aliens who had volunteered for the mission. Mantis warriors, mountain clan fighters, light seeker guardians, and representatives from species whose names Jake was still learning to pronounce. All of them had chosen to follow the humans into what their elders called certain death. Understood, Captain Morrison, came the voice of Skethry, the young Mantis warrior. We are ready to follow your lead. Ryan Kelly was coordinating the tactical approach from the second ship. Pirate vessels are holding position around the research station. They think we're here to negotiate. Good, Jake said. Let them think that as long as possible. Back on the council station, the chamber was in chaos. Elder Vorthan stood at the center, trying to maintain order as hundreds of aliens argued about what to do. The older generation was horrified that their young people had joined the human rescue mission. The younger aliens who had stayed behind were demanding to be sent as reinforcements. This is madness, Thurok thundered, his electric gloves sparking with agitation. They will all be killed, and the hostages with them. Perhaps, Vorthan said quietly, but they will die as warriors. When was the last time any of us could say that about ourselves? Ambassador Zethkri was monitoring the rescue fleet's progress on the main screen. They are approaching the pirate formation. The humans are requesting communication with the pirate. Leader, on the rescue fleet, Jake opened a channel to the pirate ships. The face that appeared on his screen was ugly and scarred, with metal implants covering half of its skull. This was Captain Vex, leader of the Savage Nebula pirates? Well, Vex snarled in Galactic Standard. The council finally sends someone to talk. You here to discuss my price? I'm here to give you one chance to surrender, Jake said calmly. Vex stared at him for a moment, then began laughing. It was a harsh, unpleasant sound. Surrender? Little man, I have 15 ships and 200 hostages. You have 12 patrol boats and a death wish. I think you should worry about surrendering. To me. I'm giving you 30 seconds to release the hostages and leave this system, Jake continued as if Vex had not spoken. After that, we come and take them. The pirate captain's expression changed from amusement to anger. You're insane. I could kill every hostage before you got within weapons range. You could try, Jake said, but you won't. Why not? Vex demanded. Because you're not brave enough, Jake replied. You only attack helpless people. When faced with real opposition, you'll run like the coward you are. Vex's face turned purple with rage. I'll show you who's a coward. Attack formation. Destroy these fools. The pirate ships broke from their positions around the research station and moved toward the council fleet. On paper, it should have been an easy victory for the pirates. They had superior numbers, better weapons, and defensive positions, but something happened that no military computer could have predicted. The council ships did not fight like a normal fleet. Instead of spreading out to minimize losses, they moved together like a single organism. When the pirates targeted one ship, 2 others would immediately move to protect it. When a council ship was damaged, the others would cover its retreat, while simultaneously pressing the attack. How are they doing this? Vex screamed at his tactical officer as another pirate ship exploded. They're fighting like they don't care if they die. Because they don't, his officer replied, staring at the battle in shock. They're fighting like the stories say the Terrans used to fight. Ryan Kelly was coordinating the fleet's movements from his position, but he barely needed to give orders. The alien volunteers seemed to understand what needed to be done without being told. When he called for a risky maneuver to protect the hostages, every ship responded instantly. "Scuthry, can you break through their defensive line?" Ryan asked. "Over the communication system." "For the hostages, I can do anything," the young Mantis warrior replied. His ship dove toward 3 pirate vessels, dodging their weapons' fire with impossible skill. Behind him, 2 mountain clan ships provided covering fire while a light seeker vessel used its energy weapons to create a corridor through the enemy formation. Dr. Helen Brooks was aboard the research station, having transported over during the first moments of the battle. Her job was to coordinate the evacuation of the hostages while the fleet kept the pirates busy. "How many more?" She called to the station's security chief, a nervous Gornathi named Kelm. 60 still trapped in the lower levels," Kelm replied. "The pirates sealed the blast doors before they retreated." "Then we open them," Helen said simply. "Impossible," Kelm protested. "Those doors are designed to withstand explosions. Nothing we have can cut through them." Helen smiled, and Kelm felt a chill run down his spine. There was something in her expression that reminded him of the old stories about the species that never accepted defeat. "Kelm," she said, "you're thinking like someone who wants to minimize damage. I'm thinking like someone who wants to save lives. Now help me figure out how to get through those doors." Outside, the space battle was turning into a rout. The pirates had expected a normal engagement where both sides would try to minimize their losses. Instead, they faced opponents who fought with a coordination and determination they had never seen. Captain Vex watched in horror as his ships were systematically destroyed or disabled. The Council fleet was taking damage too, but instead of retreating, the damaged ships fought even harder. "This is impossible," he muttered. "No one fights like this anymore." His tactical officer looked up from his instruments with wide, frightened eyes. "Captain, I'm reading massive energy signatures from the Council ships. They're overloading their weapons and engines." "They're going to destroy themselves," Vex said in disbelief. "No," the officer said, understanding dawning in his voice. "They're preparing to ram us if we don't surrender." Vex stared at the tactical display. The human ships were indeed moving into ramming positions, ready to destroy themselves to stop the pirates. But more terrifying than that was the realization that the alien ships were following their lead without hesitation. "Get me a communication channel to the human ship," Vex said quietly. Jake's face appeared on the pirate captain's screen. Behind him, the bridge of his ship was filled with smoke and sparks from battle damage, but his expression was calm. "Ready to surrender?" Jake asked. "You're all insane," Vex said. "You'd really die just to save some strangers?" "Without hesitation," Jake replied. "The question is, are you ready to die just to hurt them?" Vex looked around his own bridge at his crew. They were criminals and killers, but they were not fanatics. They fought for money and power, not for causes they believed in. "All ships, stand down," Vex said into his communication system. "We surrender." The space battle ended as suddenly as it had begun. The remaining pirate ships powered down their weapons and waited for the Council fleet to take them prisoner. On the research station, Helen and her team had successfully evacuated all the hostages, but the real victory was not measured in ships destroyed or lives saved. It was measured in the change that had come over the young aliens who had fought alongside the humans. Later, as the fleet returned to the Council station, Jake stood on the bridge of his ship and listened to the communication channels. The young aliens were talking excitedly about the battle, but more than that, they were talking about the future. "We could do more than just react to pirates," Scuthry was saying. "We could hunt them down and stop them before they attack anyone." "The outer rim colonies need protection," added Gorak, the mountain clan warrior. "We could establish patrol routes, maybe even build bases." "Think of what we could accomplish if we worked together like this all the time," said a light seeker. "Pilot named Zenter," Ryan Kelly smiled as he listened. They're not talking like galactic citizens anymore, he said to Jake. They're talking like a military unit. More than that, Jake replied. They're talking like people who believe they can make a difference. When the fleet docked at the council station, they were met by crowds of aliens. The older generation looked worried and confused, but the younger aliens cheered as the rescue ships arrived. Word of the victory had spread throughout the station, and with it, something that had been missing from the galaxy for 12,000 years. Hope. Elder Vorthen was waiting for Jake as he disembarked from his ship. The ancient light seeker looked older than ever, but there was something new in his black eyes. Captain Morrison, Vorthen said, I owe you an apology. For what? Jake asked. For believing that peace required weakness, Vorthen replied. For thinking that civilization meant accepting injustice rather than fighting it. Jake looked around the docking bay at the young aliens who had fought with him. They stood differently now, carried themselves with a confidence they had not possessed. Before the battle,